Hello, hello, and welcome back to the My Sugar-Free Journey podcast. Again, I am your host, Aaron Farmer. We've got a very special episode today for a couple reasons. We've got a return guest today. He was actually the first guest that was ever on this podcast almost 150 episodes ago, and he's been on here a couple more times. But he is back here today to talk to something that I have been watching take shape and come together. Kind of at a distance through his podcast for, it seems like a year or two now, watching Fat the documentary go from just the little sprig of an idea to a full-fledged documentary that each and every one of you can now pre-order and get your hands on very, very quickly. So welcome to the show, Vinnie Tortorich. Vinnie, welcome to the show.
Aaron, thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure. And every time I see you, you look like a different human being. You were bloated the first time I ever saw you.
Yeah.
And how much weight have you lost?
When I've lost a little over 200 pounds, but when you first came on the podcast, when I first started this podcast, I had probably lost 75-ish. So I was about 325 the first time that we talked. I'm sitting at about around 200, 220, just depending on a couple different factors. But yeah, that's about where I'm at right now.
Well, that's good. And, it's good to see that you're sticking with it because, as I tell everyone, it's either you stick with it or you end up dying way too soon. Those are kind of your choices.
Yep. Well, that was definitely what motivated me when you're looking at, your blood pressure of a 200 over 160, you don't really know, you get it figured out that you don't have much time to live, and you need to get some things, squared away and start fixing some problems. And so that's why I'm so grateful that I, stumbled across basically, your podcast. Actually, you were on another podcast that I listened to, and that was really the beginning. Those were those first steps for me. No sugar, no grains, and it's gotten to the point now where I'm much healthier. I can walk and run and lift heavy things and play with my grandkids and do all the things that are important to me. So I really owe you a debt of thanks for that.
Well, you're welcome. But as I tell everyone, I didn't do anything. All I do is sit around and suggest what people should do. You guys actually do all the hard work. So good on you. Congratulations, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And, I was just talking to someone the other day about you and about your podcast because your daughter is graduating college or just graduated college, right?
That's right.
And when I first started listening to you, you were just talking about it was probably her sophomore year of high school, and y'all were talking about maybe trying to get her into start thinking about college. And I cannot believe how long I've been listening to you and how long you've been doing the podcast thing. It's really been an impressive journey to watch.
Yeah. It's been 7 or 8 years now. We have, I think, like 14. If you count the ones we have in a can, we probably have 1,400 shows. And if you would have told Anna and I were talking about that recently. Anna's my co-host, and if someone would have said that to me 7.5 years ago, I would have said, "No, I'm going to do 5 or 6 of these," right? Because I didn't know what podcast was. I said, oh, yeah, you do 5 or 6 of them, and then people find it online for the rest of eternity. I didn't realize that it would become a full-time job. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we don't have a ton of time, so I want to dive right into the fat of of our conversation today, which is Fat the documentary. Like I said, I've been watching this thing come together with great interest because my story includes a run-in with the documentary back 7-8 years ago that really put me on the wrong path. One of the first kind of health things that I ran into was fat, sick, and nearly dead. And, I spent a month or two juicing everything. I lost weight, but good grief, I felt miserable. So, I've seen firsthand the power of a documentary to kind of, to put some, some hope, um, like maybe this is a problem that I can fix. And the idea that we can have a documentary that actually tells the truth, because there's just not a whole lot of these these that exist out there. I'm excited to see this happen. So can you tell us a little bit, like, where did this idea come from?
Actually, it's funny you should mention Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, because I remember watching, no one told me to watch it. I happened to see it, I think on an airplane or something. I can't remember, but I went, oh, let's see what's doing here. And I have a really good bullshit meter. And I'm watching it, and it's like this guy, he says, okay, I'm from Australia or New Zealand or something, and I'm going to juice, but I'm going to juice my way across the United States. I'm going to put a blender in the trunk of my car. And right there, I said to myself, why is he juicing his way across the United States? It just didn't play right in my head, but I just kept watching because why not? And then he meets a trucker in a truck stop, and he does what everybody does. He just happened to give a trucker his phone number, right? Sure. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Whenever I'm in a truck stop, I'm always handing my phone number out to truckers, to just odd people. So that took me by, I was like, why did he give that trucker his phone number? Because I watch everything in a literal fashion. I can only see life that way. And then it's like, well, this movie's not going anywhere. And he goes back to Australia and he goes, wouldn't you know it, this trucker happened to call me and said, right, I want you to save my life. And all right, oh, okay, now, all right. This is a hoax from the beginning, right? And this is another go vegan, eat, blend a bunch of vegetables is going to save your life. I went, I can't believe I've been duped again by a movie, right? But, right, people like yourself, a lot of people, you were 200 pounds heavier. You're going, wait a minute, this super fat trucker got in shape. Maybe I can get in shape, right? Right. Well, the last time that happened to me was when the movie What the Health came out. That movie came out, and the guy at the beginning, Kip, the I guess you would call him the protagonist in the movie, he's kind of running the show. And if you watch the first couple of minutes, Kip says, hey, I'm just a guy, and I was just looking around for the best diet, and someone just kind of sort of mentioned something called vegan, and I thought maybe I kind of look into it. Who knew that this is the best way to eat? And I'm watching this going, no, you're Kip from Cowspiracy. Exactly. You know what this is. You're lying. You were in another movie with the same propaganda. So right from the get-go, I went, okay, this is a lie, because this guy is pro-vegan. He's pro-PETA. He's in bed with all these vegan people. And he's lying at the top of the movie going, hey, bro, I was just looking around and vegan fell into my lap. Right. And I'm watching this going, here we go again. And then I watched the movie, and it was one lie after another on top of lies, and then lies on top of lies. And someone came to me and said, okay, big guy, why don't you do a movie, but do the opposite of this? And I said, no, that would be a lie too. For me to go, hey man, I'm Vinnie, and I was just walking around and I tried a piece of meat and I went, voila, and meat is what you should do. And then I start all this propaganda with meat. I couldn't do that, right? So what I decided to do was go out, collect all the data, and then just put it out there for people to see. And the way we did to go back, not 50 years. Everybody likes to go back 50 years because that's the beginning of Ansel Keys, when Ansel Keys started his reign on the government, and to get all the stuff, all the laws passed to make meat almost considered a carcinogen. I decided to go back to the 1860s and look at what happened when Lincoln was still in office, basically, right? And let's look at what's going on and what happened in the 1860s and bring that forward and show this long journey of how we became so fat and so out of shape and have people with blood pressures like yours, right? And
Right.
I got all the experts, all the top experts from around the world, and put them in a movie to help me tell this story.
Yeah, because that is what, kind of I guess a myth that that exists, that Ansel Keys changed the world. Like we ate one way, and then Ansel Keys came and changed everything. And like a lot of people don't realize that there were already these forces were already kind of swirling to move to move our diet in this direction, mainly because we had these giant open plains that were great for growing wheat, and America wanted to sell wheat, but the that idea that we were already starting to walk down this road. In fact, I would listen to an interview with Nina Teicholz, and they kind of pushed her on that. They were like, Ansel Keys, people were already starting to get fat at the time of Ansel Keys. I mean, the reason Ansel Keys existed is because the president had a heart attack. People were already getting heart attacks. And Nina Teicholz pointed out, that's because these ideas were already in the zeitgeist, that fat was bad for you and you needed to, if you ate a steak, it was going to clog up your arteries. Ansel Keys didn't invent those lies. He just codified them.
You're absolutely right. The lies started with a church, a religion, the Seventh-day Adventist. And, for the lack of any other way of calling it, a crazy woman in the church, because every church has their crazy church lady.
Right.
And this woman in the 1860s named Ellen White had a premonition. And the premonition was that we shouldn't eat anything with a face. We shouldn't eat any of God's loving beings, any sentient beings. So obviously meat, we couldn't eat meat. And she said,
Right.
We shouldn't eat eggs from chickens because that's embryos, and we shouldn't do any of this. And they had a young writer at the time. He was 15 years old, but he was very prolific, very smart, a guy named John Harvey Kellogg, who was working with the church. And when Kellogg went to college, he became a doctor. He was Dr. Kellogg. He was way into the church, and veganism has started in the church, but nobody could do veganism in the late 1800s because by cutting out meat meant that you would miss one of the vitamins you need to live. It's an essential vitamin, meaning that you have to ingest it. And that's a B vitamin, vitamin B12. And you miss other things from a vegan diet too. So you couldn't really be a vegan, but they were pushing that initiative. And then John Kellogg decided, because part of the church is you're not supposed to masturbate or even have sex unless you are going to have a kid. So
Right.
even with your wife or your husband, you're not supposed to have sex. And they figured out that if you ate less meat or no meat at all, you won't be as virile. So they were trying to get people not to be virile in the church. And Kellogg, being as smart as he is, came up with a thing called dextrinization, where he figured out how you could take wheat or you could take any kind of corn or any kind of carbohydrate and cook it down so much that it becomes a sugar. And that's dextrose. That's where dextrose comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And once he figured out dextrinization, he was able to figure out the Kellogg cornflake. And it was perfect for him because it was what the vegans were talking about. If you ate this product, you were less virile. And hey, John Kellogg can laugh all the way to the bank. So
Right.
It was a win-win. And he had a guy that used to work for him named C.W. Post. And we know what happened with that company. So now you have these companies in this religion pushing an initiative, even though they knew they had a problem. You could not do it because we haven't discovered vitamine yet, which became vitamin.
Mm-hmm.
And once you had exogenous vitamins, now vegans can actually do it because they can supplement with the vitamins, right?
Right.
And by the
Yeah,
way, let me just add this. If you look at cereals, they will say 8 essential vitamins and iron. So they're adding all the vitamin Bs to the product just so that you can eat that and somehow live through it.
Right. So one of my favorite stories about that time was both Kellogg's and Post came out with identical products. They both came out with cornflakes, and they were selling neck and neck until Kellogg's had the brilliant idea of frosting his flakes. He came out with frosted, so he added sugar to the cornflakes. Yeah. Well, then the race was over. Kellogg started outselling Post Flakes like 10-1, and that's when Kellogg's really discovered the nation's appetite for sugar. And now it's hard to get a cereal that doesn't include, more cereal than wheat, or more cereal than corn, almost, or I'm sorry, more sugar. than grains. And that's what that whole empire was built on, was sugar and grains, sugar and grains, sugar and grains, and the idea that that was the healthiest way to eat. And I wish, because I've talked to so many vegans over the years, and I've always wondered, because veganism and atheism go so strongly hand in hand. I wonder if vegans really have ever really come to grips with the fact that their movement had a religious foundation and was really brought together to further a religious idea. Have you ever talked with a vegan about that?
I have. Vegans hate the fact that I know more about them than they know about themselves. I always liken that to when I went to Tulane. All of a sudden, I met Jewish kids. I grew up in the swamp. There were no Jews in the swamp. But I went to Tulane. There were a lot of Jews. I spent 13 years Catholic school education, and these Jewish kids knew more about my religion than I did.
Right.
I know more about veganism than vegans do, and they get very upset whenever I tell them about their religion, or about, it is a religion, it's a cult. When I tell them about it, they'll go, and I'll go, as we all say, you can Google that shit. And they'll go down the Google rabbit hole and they'll go, oh my God, like I'll give you an example. Most vegans will say, look, veganism has been around for thousands of years. The Indians, the people of India, I was like, no. They were vegetarian, and they would eat eggs, and they would eat fish, and they would eat some meat, but they ate mostly vegetarian because cows are sacred to them.
Right.
So even though they call themselves vegetarian, they would eat other animals, and they would eat eggs, and they would drink milk and cheese and everything else. So even their vegetarianism wasn't really vegetarianism. But it's a long day to explain that to a vegan. And then I'll say, vegan's only been around for a couple of years. And I'll go, no way. And I'll say, oh yeah, it's the Seventh-day Adventist. And they'll go, that's a lie. And I go, well, I'm not making that up. You can easily Google it.
Mm-hmm. And, many religions will knock off, or will eliminate one particular animal, whether it be the Jews with pigs, or with Hinduism with beef. But none of them, except for veganism, cuts them all out. And I think that's because, at some point, religion has to be at least somewhat concerned with human flourishing. I mean, that's why we invented religion, right? Is to help humans flourish. And for whatever reason, veganism does not hold itself to that standard. It does not care about human flourishing. It is quite content to see its people wither away and deal with all kinds of terrible health problems, as long as they stick to their religious duties of not eating meat. It is definitely something to watch. So you wanted to make a documentary that told the other kind of another part of the story, this dietary story, but the idea, the name of the documentary is Fat, a Documentary. I assume you're tracing this idea of when we had fat in our diet, we flourished. When we removed fat from our diet, We got sicker, we got thinner, or we got smaller, like physically. We didn't have as much height. And then probably stories, I would assume, of people who have reintroduced fat to their diet, to remarkable effect. What made you decide to do that kind of
You're frozen up on me there. Aaron, can you hear me? Aaron?
stable? Actually, I can hear you just fine.
Okay, now, there you are. We're back. So I heard your question,
I'm sorry.
and then you froze up. We do a few things in the movie. We tell a few stories, right? We tell the story of Charlie Abrams, that's Jim Abrams' son. The movie, it's a cold opening. The first person you see on screen is a toddler. That's Charlie. We have film of Charlie as a baby, just flopping all over the place. And then you hear a voice. And the voice is Jim Abrams.
I hate hearing that.
Yeah, well, you hear a voice of a guy talking, and then we go to Jim Abrams on screen. You still don't know who it is because we don't put his name underneath. And he starts telling the story about his son. And then he starts openly weeping on camera. That's how powerful the movie is. One of Hollywood's biggest directors and producers is crying on camera. A man who brought us more funny than anything you can imagine. Right. But we don't really start telling the story there. We just give you that piece. And then we go into the movie and we start showing the history of how we ended up here, right? I tried to keep myself out of the movie as much as I could. I come in and say, okay, here we are, and this is what we're doing, and this is what happened. And then I'll let everyone else tell the story. We show all the science that's been there for 100 years. We show the science on screen. And while we were editing the movie, I turned to Peter Pardini, the director, one day, and I said, Peter, I'm being thrown a little bit by the science. And I said, the reason I'm thrown by it is because we'll have Nina Teicholz talking about it. We'll have Gary Taubes talking about it, or Eric Westman talking about it. And then we'll flash it up on the screen, but no one's ready to read it. So I got two people to read it. I got Mike Dawson from the Adam Carolla Show to do some of the narration, and I got Serena to do the other narration. They're reading the history, and they're reading what was going on, and you're watching all of this happen at once. I don't do that thing where we go, hey, Aaron Farmer was a fat guy, and I met him in a truck stop one day, and now here he is. I wasn't going to do that kind of schlock. By the way, I could have done that movie. I could have gotten you. I could have gotten that guy Stockton, whatever his name is. Can't remember his name. I could have gotten like a half dozen of you guys that have lost 200 pounds and convinced the hell out of the world that, hey, look at these M1 experiments. They work. Instead, I showed the science, right? I did something that no one else does. I threw the science on the screen. And then I had the Westmans and the Taubes and the Teicholz talking about it. And we address cholesterol, and we address fat, and we address carbohydrates. We address it all for people to see. And then we go back and tell the Jim Abrams story, the Charlie Abrams story. We tell the Gary Fettke story, because that story is so strange that you're sitting there and you're not believing what you're hearing, right? Exactly. And for your audience, if someone doesn't know what it is, the quick story is Gary still is an orthopedic surgeon in Tasmania who had to chop people's feet off from type 2 diabetes. And then he figured out, wait, all I have to do is take them off of sugar and put them on fat, and I can heal these people. Well, the government of Tasmania wasn't going to have it. They said, no, you just chop their feet off. What are you doing saving people? That's not why we pay you. Just chop their feet off, right? And they took his license away. The truth is stranger than fiction.
Right.
The surprise thing you're going to see in a movie, we were already finished filming, and Peter and I were already editing. And this woman got in touch with me. Her husband's a doctor. And she started telling me the story about her son, who is a type 1 diabetic, and how she started healing up her son, not healing him because you can't heal from type 1 diabetes, but instead of taking a ton of insulin, he was able to now take the slow-acting insulin in just small amounts of it just to control his diabetes, right? He wasn't taking these massive doses anymore. And they tried to get her sent to a loony bin because they said putting your kid on a ketogenic diet makes you a crazy lady. And it turns out she's doing a documentary too. And I can't wait for theirs to come out. It was amazing what this woman showed me. And I said, Peter, we got to stop editing. We need to go shoot again. Amazing. We got this husband and wife, the doctor and the wife, to LA and shot with them. When you see that story, you're gonna go, my God, we're living in a crazy world.
Absolutely. So, Vinnie, I am so excited about this documentary. I cannot wait to see it. I've already pre-ordered my copy, and I'm just waiting for that day to come. So let's tell my people, how can they pre-order? When is it going to be out? And all the stuff that they need to know about this.
Well, let me ask you this: when is this show coming out? Because
I'm gonna bump it up to almost immediately. So this Monday will be the 24th. It'll be out on the 24th.
Okay, so as of right now, you can pre-order it on iTunes. It comes out on July 30th. You can pre-order on iTunes. If you're a person who, for some reason, doesn't use iTunes, you can now pre-order it on Vimeo. And I'm told that in the next several days, maybe by the time this comes out, but I can't promise, it's going to be up on Amazon, on Blu-ray, and all that kind of stuff on Amazon. So they're rolling it out to more and more places. The cool thing, Aaron, is that we got Gravitas Ventures behind it. They're putting a lot of money behind this movie. And awesome. They're doing a worldwide release. This movie can be the paradigm shift that we're all looking for. It really can. Yeah.
I think it will be. So they just go to iTunes or those places and search Fata Documentary to find the pre-order link, I guess. Or I'm going to put a pre-order link in the show notes. But those of you that are listening can't be bothered to find the show notes. Just go to iTunes, search Fata Documentary, and pre-order it. Vinnie, how important is it that we have tons of pre-orders before this video hits the airwaves or drops?
I can't explain how important it is, but the way everything works in Computerville is you need the algorithms on your side. And if we want this movie to have a big release and get other people to find it, because as I've learned, because I own a vitamin company and a coffee company, you need the numbers behind you to make anything work, right? iTunes doesn't care about me and my movie. All they care about is the algorithm of how many people are buying this. Oh, wait, people want to see this? We're going to put it front and center so more people can find it. So it's super important that everyone, even if you have a copy coming through because you were one of the supporters of the movie, it's very important to spend that $13, that $12.99, to go and get it again, because it's the only way that we're going to keep it right. It was number 2 behind Apollo 11. I think it's number 4, 5, or 6 right now. It's staying in the top of iTunes. Great. But it's massively important that everyone goes and buy it and get your friends to buy it, pre-order it, because it keeps it up there so that we can have the success that this film needs to get.
Do you have any numbers yet? Like, do you know how many pre-orders you sold, or is that available?
I do not.
Okay.
I have an idea.
Okay.
I could tell you this. They said to me they didn't have any faith in me, meaning the company that took it. They said, look, if you could get 500 pre-orders, that would be great. And I said, 500? No, my audience is going to do better than that. Let's double that. But you have to understand, people don't pre-order. And I'm okay. He goes, so he goes, the challenge is there, 1,000. We went past 1,000 on the first day, and we went past
Awesome.
2,000 at some point. I don't know where it is now. He quit telling me after. I think 2,100 was the last time I saw anything, but it's not enough. I mean, look, it would take 20 or 30,000 downloads for this film to even get back the money we spent on it, and then it would take 100,000 downloads before they're anywhere near the money they're spending on it. You know,
right?
I don't think people realize what it costs to get a movie out.
I know I don't.
It's all just crazy numbers. That I was told by my friend Adam Carolla, you don't make money on documentaries. And I went, well, why not? He goes, because it costs so much money to do it. And then documentaries don't make the same kind of money, you know, they make on a film by The Rock or Fast 8 or one of those movies make billions, right? That's why they see money back, not documentaries.
Well, I think that you're going to prove them wrong. And so to my audience, I just want to say, I just want to get you guys, please go pre-order this video. If you're watching this at some point in the far-flung future, go stop what you're doing, go to iTunes right now and order it. Check it out. I just can't even tell you how excited I am to see this. I've already told my wife that the day it comes out that she and I are going to sit down on the couch and watch it. So that's our big plan. Vinnie, I promised I'd get you out of here by now, and I'm already running late. I apologize, but let me just tell you, thank you so much for coming on and telling us about this.
Anytime, Aaron. I love coming on your show. I'm glad you're still doing it. Keep up the great work, and look forward to. As a matter of fact, I need to get you back on my show, on the Saturday show.
Love to do it. I'd love to do it. We'll set that up. All right, Vinnie, thank you so much for coming on. And for those of you that are listening, hold on. We'll be right back with some more information.